Today we're going to talk about why it's so hard to quit pornography for good and also the different levels of pornography addiction. Now, do you have a resistance to admitting that you have a porn addiction? Because I admit that when I began my journey to end my out of control behavior with pornography and masturbation, I simply refused to categorize myself as an addict. After all, I came from an educated, moderately religious family and we had conservative values. I experienced a relatively happy and memorable childhood. I never tried any hardcore drugs. I tried to live by the book. Yet I would always find myself acting like this possessed heroin junkie every time I went without pornography or masturbating for like 3 days. And many men find it really difficult to admit that they have a problem with pornography because it simply hasn't been labeled as an addiction, right, by the mainstream media or by society in general. And of course, that's going to change over the next few years. It already is changing. But in the meantime, I'd like to point out why pornography and masturbation addiction is so much trickier to beat than other addictions. In fact, some of my clients who have recovered from alcohol and drug addictions confirm that porn, sex, and masturbation are harder to quit than those substances. Now, there are two simple criteria when it comes to identifying when a person's porn use is addictive. The first is that you have no control over it, and this means that you have made a firm decision to quit, but you've given into it several times. And the second are the negative consequences. So it's affecting your emotions, your career, your relationships, your productivity, your schoolwork, your lifestyle, your business. It's doing so in a negative way. Now, both criteria need to be met for porn, sex, or masturbation to be classified as an addiction or a compulsion. The level of loss of control and the level of negative consequences must also be considered when trying to stop this behavior. And in my experience, the level of porn addiction varies depending on different factors in your life. Listen, this is a very crucial fact that many people online, many of the people you're listening to on podcasts and YouTube that speak about pornography addiction, even some therapists don't understand. So excuse me while I rant for a moment, okay? This is not a game and it is not a challenge. It is a serious problem that destroys lives. There are people out there giving out a handful of techniques, tips, and philosophies on how to quit porn. And these things might help a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old or a 16-year-old who spends 80% of his time playing video games and online. But it's not going to do anything for the 28-year-old, for the 35-year-old professional, for the 40-year-old business owner who feels that this is sabotaging his career, right? If this is sabotaging your serious life relationships, if you're at risk of losing your kids to divorce, if you feel that your life is possibly over because you've tried to end this so many times, the rantings of some 21-year-old or 25-year-old who feels guilty about masturbating and telling you that they're an influencer and going to help you end your behavior is useless. It's a waste of your time, right? Listen, some young men don't know what it's like to go through divorce, right? Because a lot of times they're so stuck on pornography, they can't even get into a relationship. Many of them don't know how to deal with real life stress, such as paying mortgages, keeping employees on payroll, juggling work and kids, taking care of aging parents, paying taxes, dealing with workplace politics, and health issues. The list goes on and on. If you're 18 to 24 years old and you're watching this, there's no doubt that you're above average and you have some big aspirations. So take your problem with pornography seriously, handle it, and start living your best life. If not, you're going to spend the next few years trying to end this behavior. I have been doing this for about 14 years now, and I have seen men who were working with me, who were watching my videos, who were reading my emails over a decade ago, still struggle with it because they refuse to ask for help. Don't be that guy. My advice to you is simple. The next time that you are watching a video or reading a book or you're looking for a counselor to help you with your porn addiction, screen them to find out if they really understand the different levels of pornography addiction that I'm going to talk about in this video, okay? There are different levels of porn addiction. The first level, this is level one, and it is the person who watches pornography 3 or 4 times a year. In fact, you can count on your hands the number of times that you've watched pornography in a 12-month period. this is the level that you're at. So it's not really a pornography addiction, but due to the highly sexualized world that we live in, there's of course always a risk of more involvement in pornography. And if you have well established, healthy ways of managing your emotions, your stress, and your family life, you're probably not at risk. Now, level two. At this level, you're not addicted either, but you've probably watched pornography and masturbated to it perhaps 6 to 12 times in a year. And some of those cases, you were not just simply aroused or bored. One or more of those sessions may have been triggered by curiosity, something you came across online, perhaps because of a reference someone made or something you watched. At this level, you may have watched pornography to medicate or anesthetize or feel better about an undesirable situation in your life. Level 3. At this point, pornography is quite likely to have become a problem. Now you're viewing pornography at least once a month, or possibly for a few months, or you've been viewing pornography for a few years. And you know that you're at level 3 when you try to stop yourself each month, but no matter how hard you try, you always end up going back to pornography. And usually you binge watch pornography for a while, then you try to quit again. And this is the point where many men start using willpower. You start counting down how many days, you start marking it off on a calendar, the days that you spend off pornography. It's not an out of control problem yet, but it does take effort to quit. Now, since the pornography that you're watching at this point is no longer softcore pornography, your tastes are gradually changing. And it is that fantasy that moves you from level 3 to level 4. Now, at level 3, when you're not watching pornography, there's a very high chance that you're still fantasizing or sexualizing your encounters with other people, and you're sexualizing other people. When you fantasize intensely for prolonged periods of time, you still release chemicals which make you feel good, but that feeling only gets better when you view pornography. So you're reinforcing those neural pathways. Now there's level 4. And at this level, pornography is having an obvious effect on your life. So you may start noticing that pornography is slowly affecting your career, your family, or your academic work. Your fantasies are out of control at this point. So when you're not watching pornography, you often find yourself fantasizing about porn and sex. So you watch pornography at this point a couple of times a month. You've been trying to find different ways to stop, but nothing is working. You're starting to get worried about why it's so difficult to quit, but you're not talking to anyone about it yet. And this is the point where you get a little bit concerned. You go online and you start typing, how to stop watching pornography, how to quit pornography, is pornography addiction real? And in my professional experience, this level is also your final chance to end your porn use on your own. Beyond this, your entire life, whether you realize it or not, is going to be dictated to some level by your porn addiction. And the reason why is that left unchecked, your behavior with pornography begins to generate deeper psychological issues. So over the years, I've realized that there are only 2 responses to level 4. And for the sake of simplicity, I'll just divide these responses into 2 groups of men, right? I'll call them type A men and type B men, all right? Now, type A men, this is the already accomplished person who understands what it takes to achieve success on a consistent basis. Now, a type A man, he's typically already established himself in his career, and he may have a relatively balanced lifestyle. So this means that you have friends, you have close bonds with your family, you take care of your health, and you know how to go about getting things that you want in life. If you are a business owner, your business is already typically established, you're very busy, you're doing well, but you've managed to understand how your priorities between family, business, and health work. And for men like you, once you understand that you have a problem, you actually see it as an obstacle in your life. Your natural reaction, or rather response to things like this, is the same as every obstacle in your life or in business or in your career. You're going to do whatever is necessary to get rid of it because you have places to go. So a type A man will go find a counselor, a therapist, a mentor. You will invest in something actionable to get back your edge on your own, right? Now, while searching for help online, type A men are very picky. you have a tendency to screen everyone. You're looking for people who have results and who have success. So whoever you speak with doesn't only have success in helping people, but they have success in their life as well. And this has usually worked out well for you in other parts of your life. Thanks to this approach, you usually experience positive results in your reboots. Some of my most successful clients are driven lawyers, engineers, mortgage loan officers, investment bankers, business owners, law school students, sales guys, doctors. But I do want to note that there are some type A men who do not seek help. And usually they are never informed that one can have a compulsive behavior with pornography, or they are misdiagnosed by a counselor, or they're just at such a high level of financial success that you are insulated from the reality of the problem. So I have another video which talks about how wealth and affluence can insulate you from seeking help. Now on to type B man. The type B person is usually a person who has not yet achieved their goals, or you are lagging behind in your goals for one reason or the other. There's nothing wrong with that. Typically, you have very good intentions, but you already have problems motivating yourself, right? You may have some bad habits, you may have some little addictions to social media, bad habits with your phone, with the internet, with your diet. Maybe you have some compulsive behavior with video games or something else, right? You may have a minor drug or alcohol problem, and you usually have a career, but it's not your ideal career. You wouldn't rate yourself anywhere near your potential. Now, some type B men have a genuine desire to be successful, but unfortunately, your repeated failures have just left you with a lot of self doubt. And that's sadly the case with most men who are seeking help. I've noticed that many type B men have depression, ADHD, or some other disorder, or some sort of diagnosis that serves as a subconscious crutch throughout your life. And this frequently sabotages any attempts you have to excel in life. I do want to make it clear that I started out as very much a type B man. And it took a lot, but I was able to turn my life to become more of a type A man. Now, type B men, once you understand that you have a problem, you will respond the way you've responded to most things in life. So typically, you'll seek the opinion of someone who's similar to you, right? So type B men gravitate towards influencers on social media, people who are entertaining, similar demographic to them. You're more likely to accept popular opinion as fact as opposed to doing your own research. You're more likely to seek out the feminine. If there's a pretty woman or a woman talking about something, you're more likely to listen because you're intimidated by being called out by the masculine. And with most things, the popular way, of course, is to seek the easy way. And in the case of quitting pornography, you're going to find a lot of information out there on staying off pornography for 90 days, counting days, improving your lifestyle, doing a dopamine detox, and so on. So you often end up watching a lot of videos and then trying to stop masturbating. So the more you watch and study these things, the better you're going to understand them. But type B men rarely take a lot of action. Your action, when you do take it, is limited to things like watching a lot of videos, reading a lot of articles, and just sitting in groups commenting a lot. And when you do try to curb your behavior with pornography, you usually fail because you don't have a definitive plan. Your self-doubt, which is reinforced by your underachieving in other areas of your life, kicks in. And when the effects of pornography addiction on your life become too unbearable, the type B man, that's the only time he starts to seek help. Unfortunately, because you don't believe in investing in yourself, you keep going for cheap and quick fixes, and then that makes you prey to all kinds of scams and grifts to people who are trying to make money online. Now, I will say this, if you fall into the type B category, or you are perhaps a type A person with a few character traits of a type B person that show up in your life, please don't get discouraged. Like I said, I was in that category as well, but I was fortunate enough to find a mentor who opened up my eyes to, first of all, the ways I was sabotaging myself. Level 5. Now, at this point, viewing pornography has become a daily habit, and it's a major part of your life. So you're even watching pornography and masturbating just to fall asleep. You sexualize every woman and sometimes even men that you see. Now, at level 5, you've stopped growing and developing as a person. Your career, your relationships with people, everything is actually set up to maximize your porn use and gaining access to sex. So, for instance, you spend a lot of time alone in front of your computer, on your phone, and you rarely initiate social meetups with your peers or your friends, right? You don't do things like meet up with friends for a dinner or a movie. You're not the one who calls to initiate that. All your hobbies tend to be very solitary, and you rarely step out of your comfort zone anymore, except to hang out and spend time with people who were already in your life before you got to level 5. Now, anytime I speak to a man at level 5, I find that he's paid a very heavy price for his pornography addiction. Here are some of the things that men have sacrificed by the time they get to level 5. And the first thing is your career. A lot of you have lost a job or several jobs, or you are severely underperforming at your career because of your porn use. Your relationships. Many of you have had intimate relationships that have ended either due to your partner leaving you, or because of your incessant porn use, or because you just keep sabotaging the relationship because you just can't seem to fully commit. You always feel that the grass is greener on the other side. You're always wondering if you can upgrade what you have, even when you are severely underperforming with what you have on hand, right? And when you try to end your behavior with pornography, you experience very strong withdrawal symptoms, erectile dysfunction, irritability, extreme daytime fatigue, headaches, problems sleeping, extreme social anxiety, and then worrying a lot about other people's opinion. By this point, you literally just do not know how to stop. Both type A and type B men realize at this point that they really need help, but their responses at level 5 are very different. If you're a type A person, you'll usually disclose your struggle to a trusted friend or some sort of mentor. I've seen that happen a lot. And this is usually a good step as it brings your pornography and masturbation use out of secrecy. I always say that your behavior with pornography and sex thrives in secrecy. So bringing it out into the open is a wonderful first step. But by then, you have the courage to share with more people. And many type A men are surprised to learn at this point that many of the men that they've shared it with have also struggled with it. Now, if you're a type B man, you're going to do one of two things. The first is that you might just break psychologically and decide to ignore the problem forever. And then you incorporate level 5 behavior into your life. You literally become that type of man. Or you might find rationalizations to back up your decisions, and you start saying things like, you know what, everybody does it. Sex and pornography addiction don't really exist. And this is when you start falling for things like sex positive ideologies or men going their own way and other misogynistic approaches to self improvement on the internet. Whatever group is going to reduce your shame and make you feel better about yourself. The second thing that a lot of type B men do is to seek out help in a very desperate way. So you send out these desperate one-liners begging and pleading and being very emotional because that is the only place you can be to ask for help. You're either rationalizing when you're not emotional, or you work yourself up into an emotional state and you start begging. It's the most risk-averse way to seek help, begging through the internet. Then we have level 6. Now this level is characterized by feelings of being completely out of control. Every single day of your life involves thoughts of pornography. And in an age of free pornography, you are one of the few spending money on pornography, on chat sites, on cam sites, on OnlyFans, on sugar babies. Money is involved at this point, and depression and hopelessness are two very common feelings at this level. Now, this doesn't mean that you have no desire to quit. On the contrary, you actually want to quit, but your self-doubt and your lack of hope are so overwhelming. So many men at level 6 continue using pornography even after you've been caught with it. The type of pornography that you are viewing at this point is usually drastically escalated in intensity. It is violent material. It includes bestiality, gore, snuff, incest, extreme violence, all sorts of depraved material. It is material that's not even within your sexual orientation, right? These are the only genres of pornography that can elicit an orgasm from you or this is one of the only ways you can get an erection. So staying in level 6 leads to acting out behavior. It means acting out your behaviors in real life, seeking those sexual encounters to satisfy your addictive behavior. This can range from seeking female, male, or transgender escorts to using different websites or apps or searching for random hookups in some cases. There are also incidents of predatory behavior towards vulnerable individuals like children. And at level 6, every aspect of your life is filled with lies, right? You need to do this to cover up your entire secret life. You have an entire part of you that nobody knows about. A man at level 6 can maintain this behavior for years, even decades. And when you're discovered, there's always such a high price to pay. Relationships fall apart in the most traumatic ways. Careers are destroyed, and sometimes men end up in jail. Now, the good news about level 6 is that the stakes are so high when you get caught that it can trigger a very strong emotional desire to quit. The bad news is that if you are at level 5 or level 6, you are delusional in your beliefs. So that is, while you may acknowledge that your behavior is out of control, you don't see its true impact on your life because you also incorporate the compulsive lying and manipulation into your day-to-day life, since your behavior must be maintained in secrecy. I'm going to talk about something I call breaking the armor. Over the years, I've developed an exercise which I call breaking the armor. And the purpose of this exercise is to help a man at a level 5 or level 6 drop all his conditioning temporarily for a brief moment to actually see what his life could be like without pornography. And in my opinion, this is very important, especially after years of pornography and masturbation use. So let's say you started viewing pornography at the age of 8 or 14 years old, and you've been watching pornography for 12, 15, 20, 30 years. You don't really have any concept of what a life without pornography looks like. Basically, pornography is your first real relationship. And what I mean by that is that pornography comforted you as a teen when you were anxious. It kept you company when you were lonely, when you were stressed, when you were overwhelmed. Pornography was always there to take off the edge. On restless nights, it helped you sleep, right? It taught you about sex. Maybe it even gave you some sexual confidence. It was always there for you when your heart was broken, when you were hurt. But unfortunately, pornography overstayed its welcome. So how do you let go of the one thing that you could depend on for years? What would your life look like? And that is where breaking the armor comes in. Now, what I do is that through a series of coaching questions, we gradually remove all your emotional armor or conditioning. And this is a temporary process, but for a very brief moment, you are free of your shame, your guilt, your lies, and your rationalizations. You are you. And this is a very powerful moment for many men. When some of my clients at level 5 and 6 see the incredible amount of damage that pornography has done to their families, to their finances, and to their careers, on their relationship, their self-esteem, their social life, their emotions, some of them break down and they're just crying, they're weeping. It's like being possessed against your will and your knowledge by a very different personality, which pretended to be you for years. And then one day, realizing who you are for the very first time. The self-betrayal and the lies you told yourself become so evident, and then you see the man you could have been if porn didn't get so out of control in your life. And at this point, most men decide that they are done for good. This is where the reboot process truly begins, right? When you actually feel that you have some sort of self-understanding. These levels are so important to understand in your reboot. And that's why I've never paid attention to any of the movements out there which talk about willpower or which talk about habit change or different steps. Those are designed to help men at level 3. To effectively reboot, the person guiding you in your reboot must first be able to determine which level you're at. And when you determine the level that a man is at, they know the exact steps that they can take to help you. At Porn Reboot, we help you identify your boundaries, develop the right amount of self-awareness, control your fantasies, dialogue with yourself, anticipate your urges, deal with strong emotions when you've been sad or when you experience loss, when you feel hopelessness, and accurately examine your rationalizations and so much more. And all of this depends on the level that you're at. right? Withdrawal symptoms are also experienced differently at each level. The levels of withdrawal symptoms are physical and they are emotional, right? And I'll tell you this, for the last 14 years or so, I have not met a single client out of the thousands of guys that I've worked with who could identify more than 2 withdrawal symptoms when they first joined the program. And then weeks later, they are able to identify 7 or 8 of them. So at this point, if you're like a type B man, you're probably thinking, okay, JK, you know what? I really want to quit this stuff, but you're making it sound so complicated and almost impossible. If you're that sort of person, I want you to understand that your habit of taking the easy way out is kicking in. At this moment, you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Just fight it for a little bit, okay? You'll be fine. And for the type A man, you're going to be thinking how you can best put this information to good use, right? Now, I can keep going, but I would talk for hours. The point is, take the first step of identifying your level of addiction with pornography. Watch this video again and again if you have to. Take some notes. If you want to find out more about this, you can always reach out to us. But honestly, start by also identifying whether you are a type A or a type B man. There's nothing wrong with either, right? Although I will say going through life as a type B man is clearly putting you at a disadvantage in life. But like I said, I was a type B man with a few type A traits. I broke my armor and dedicated several very painful years to changing my life. So if you want to hear a little bit more about how I changed my life to be more of a type A man, I'll leave a link to a video below that's called How to Quit Pornography and Become Successful. I'd really like to know your thoughts on what level you feel you're at and what type of man you feel you are. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and please share it with at least 3 men that you feel might find it helpful. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video.